Hello and welcome to another in the ADAPT webinar series. In this particular webinar, we're going to be looking at the ADAPT Manager profile. Now, not all of you will have this, but those of you who do, this will be an ideal webinar to look through to see all the sorts of things that you can do. Now, before you have this ADAPT Manager profile, you will need to contact the Client Services team or your eRecruit representative here at ADAPT to get that permission added to your login. In this particular webinar, we're going to be looking at some of the default settings, how to manage our new compliance features, setting up your organisational structure, and of course, adding targets, visibility, and permissions. Once you have been given the extra privileges of an ADAPT Manager profile, when you log in, you will usually have this choice that you can log in under Core Profile as a standard user or indeed as the ADAPT Manager profile. Simply select and click Continue to enter the system as such. You'll notice straight away that on the left-hand side in our menu area, we've got some extra. We've got the administration, the agency structure, and our compliance and onboarding. You'll also notice over here on the right-hand side a small cog. If you do log in as a user but need to switch profiles, you can click on the cog, select Profile, and then change your view from here. Once you've selected the one you want, simply click Apply. The first piece of extra functionality to take you through is within the Administration menu, and we're going to look at Application Settings. In this particular section, you can set defaults to happen throughout your system. And on this first page, I'd like to point out that you can change the VAT percentage, the hours per day and days per week on contract jobs, the national insurance validation and perhaps which country that's for. You can change the system setting with regards to availability. And of course, the default role on candidate creation can be changed as well. That's particularly useful if you are mainly a temporary organisation and it's mainly temps that you're going to be setting up. To change any of these details, you can click into Edit on the right-hand side and be able to access and change those. For instance, if we wanted to change the default availability start and end time, then we can simply click in and adjust that accordingly. Once you've made those, don't forget to click on the Save button. The next page to show you in here, available from the drop-down at the top, is the Payroll and Invoicing. In here, you're able to adjust your cost settings and calculations. This will obviously affect gross margin projections, etc., when it comes to pay and charge rates. In this page as well, it can be linked to other payroll software. Please make sure that you speak to the Client Services team or your eRecruit account manager to make sure that you get the correct details to add in here if you are going to do this. But don't forget, they're always happy to help you out by adding that in for you. The next page I want to point out is our multi-poster page. This is where you can add in your Broadbean account details or Idibu account details. These initially need to be set up by the Client Services team, so please do give them a call initially so they can add in the correct details for you. The AWR page allows you to switch on and off your AWR, as well as your auto check-ins. In the GDPR settings, you can see that you can look at the deletion control and also the batch eShot override. In the SMS and CTI settings, this looks at linked media or communication packages. Again, make sure you speak to the client services department. They'll be able to advise you on where to put the details you have. In the communication page, you can set the defaults that appear in the Send Docs By fields within your records when running workflows. These can be added and removed, and also default set for certain types of workflow. In our radius settings, you can see here that you can switch on or off our postcode validator, and you can also change the default kilometers that will pull through to the candidate searches. Within our marketing page, you can link up your MailChimp account should you have one. Initially, you should speak to the client services department to make sure the correct details go in. And that's looking at our default application settings. Next up, we're going to be looking at managing compliance. These are brand new features in September of 2018 when this is being recorded. And here in the Adapt Manager profile is where you will set up each item and each package that then enables the user to be able to select them against particular clients and or particular jobs. Access to this particular section is via the compliance and onboarding menu, and we're looking at the home section where you can select, as you can see here, to view items or packages that are already created. To create a new item, click on Create Item and you'll see that this page comes up. We can work through these fields. You can see there's lots of mandatory fields here, as well as black files that you need to select from the list. Now, the initial check type, when we click on the black file there, this refers to the checks that are created in your system. So before you can create items, you will need to make sure that either an appropriately trained person at your business or the client services team have added those checks as codes within the system administration. But once they are set up, then you are able to create those items. For instance, I might want to create a package that is specifically for teaching or education. So what I'd need to do is create the items that are going to go into that package. To create an item, select from the list, find what you're looking for, and then you can adjust names as appropriate, but usually they're going to be okay for you. Item type is next. What are you expecting to see as part of this check? For me, on this one is going to be documentation. It may be an identity document or even a photo. The hiring requirement, is it required or preferred for the particular one that you're setting up? For me, I would think most will be required. Then we have a look at our enforcement stage. Now this looks at when a check of that should be applied, which part of the process. Here we can see we've got new hire, pre-hire and rehire. Should you have someone shortlisted against the job when you go to send their CVs and they don't have the appropriate items or packages required, if you've set it to new hire, it will flag up a warning to tell you that that person does not have the appropriate compliance. Pre-hire does the same, flags up warnings to you before you go to assign someone to a job. And of course, rehire will again examine they have valid documents of compliance when you go to extend their booking. I'm going to use this one at new hire stage because for me, people will have to have a teaching certificate before I even send their CV across. I can turn on expiry warnings and also choose when I warn about that particular item. Most used at the moment is our expires before end of booking. When I hit confirm, that is the item created. Once I've created all my items, I can then create a package for them to go in. As I say, in this case, I'm going to call this my education required, and my description can be needed for all teaching roles. Once I hit confirm, that creates my package that I can then add items to. To do that, scroll down and click Add Item. I can search for the item by name, or I can just click Find to display a list of all the items. You'll see in here that there are some that are generic, but also some that are particular for clients. So you can create packages just for clients. In this example here, you can see that I've got ones that are for a particular company's assessment, induction, and policy. So perhaps someone before they start work there will need to have all of those. For me, I'm going to build my education required, and I'm going to check DBS, an ID check, and of course, degree certificate, and the one I just created, my teaching certificate. When I hit confirm, that will place all of those items in here as required, meaning that when I attach this to a particular client and or particular job, the candidate will need to have those items within their compliance and onboarding page as complete before I can assign them to that role. Once all of these are created in the Adapt Manager profile, they will be available for the users to select and attach and update in the appropriate records. The next section we're going to look at is setting up your organizational structure. In this particular section, we're going to be looking at creating regions, offices, and teams, and then how you would move employees into their relevant teams. You're not able to create employees in this particular login. This will be done by the client services team, or perhaps if you have been trained or have a particular on-premise package with us, then you will be able to create your own employees. That's covered in separate training. Select agency structure and then look at your next step of what you need to do. Now, we would always recommend starting from region and adding offices then to that region, and then teams to that office, and then of course adding the employees to the correct team. So let's run through an example of that. We may be a business that have different regions across the UK. I'm going to use Midlands as my region here, and then I can select the manager from a list. Once I click confirm, that then creates that region and enables me then to run from the Activities tab to create the office or offices that are within that region. Key thing here will be to type in the office name. Now again, Midlands is the name of the region, so I probably don't want to use that again. What I do want to do, and usually with offices, you're going to specify the town or the area that's in. I'm going to put in Nottingham in this instance. It's important here to add in the office address. So that when you run certain actions, activities with regards to internal interviews or where people need to go to meet with you, then this address will automatically pull through to those particular emails in Outlook when they open up in there. By hitting confirm, that then creates that particular office. I can, if I wish to, go back and click on Midlands to add further offices within that region, and you'll see the offices will be listed just here. My next step, of course, once I've created the office, is to create the teams within that office. So for instance, in this particular office, I may have a commercial team and an industrial team. Go to the activities and then click on create a team. I can put in the team name. And of course, type in who the manager of that team is. Once the team is created, you'll then be able to go to activities and use add employee to team. Select the employee. Clicking confirm will then add them to the team, and you can just continue through that with regards to the activities and move all of your employees into the team. Don't forget, they will be set up previously to you starting this particular process. So that's very straightforward to do there, but again, make sure that you start at that top level, that region level, and work your way down. If you are a single branch operation, then of course your region could be something, say England, and then you can go straight to your office, but you would still want to put in your teams that you have within that branch. Even if it's just one team, people still need to be allocated to that team. Any support or guidance you need with that, don't forget, please give the client services team a call. Our final section in this webinar is looking at all of these items here. So adding performance targets, visibility of records, and certain workflow permissions to each of your recruiters. To set all of these things up, you'll need to go into an employee record, and that's easily done by clicking on the person's name. So once we're in here, you have a drop down here for the various pages, and then also an activities menu as well. So immediately within here, if you don't have a generic job board login in your system, you can look at the default settings on how to put that in there. You can add individual ones in against the employee. You'll also notice here as well that you can update the employee details. Updating visibility is done from a different page. We'll have a look at that very shortly. But first of all, we're going to look at adding targets. And that's accessible from the drop down next to employee and clicking on targets. You'll notice there's some targets already set here. But over on the right hand side, you'll notice that I've got my create, update, copy employees targets, or copy the targets that are in here. Depending on how you want to be set up, whether you individualize targets or whether you have them for certain members of a team, you can look to create and update an individual's target by clicking on the button there, putting in the year that you wish to add them, and then select the target type from the list behind the black file there. These are the target types that we have available for you to choose. Most of them are activity-based, numerical, and we also have some financial target options down here as well that can be added in. To select the ones that you want, use your control key perhaps on your keyboard and select the ones that you wish to choose. Don't forget down the bottom here those revenue targets as well that can be added. Once you've selected all that you want, move them over to this right hand side here and click OK. That will then add those in the target type column. Your options then look at setting targets per week, per month, quarterly, and or yearly. This does not produce accumulative targets, so you would need to run settings for each individual one should you wish to set them. So for instance, you may have a weekly target on your Canvas calls. If you wanted a monthly total, you would then need to add that as well. You can, if you wish to, just set monthly targets with regards to all of the items that you've chosen. And of course, when it comes to revenue, you're going to add in the numbers here. You'll notice there's a box here to overwrite if targets already exist. So that's a good way that if someone is off or away for certain weeks and you want to adjust their targets accordingly, then you can do that through there. Once you click confirm, that will add those targets. And as you can see, overwriting them there. To break down those targets even further, you can click on the year where you can see that there's a quarterly breakdown. So you can set quarterly targets this way. You can also go into each quarter where you'll be able to see the months within that quarter and then also the weeks within that quarter. So you really can drill right down and be very specific if you wish to, with lots of detail on each of the targets that you have in here. To change the targets, simply click into edit mode and then click into the field that you wish to change. So this can be quite broad or indeed very detailed, depending on how you want to manage those. What you can also do is copy another employee's targets to bring into here. So rather than setting that on each and every employee, if you're going to have the same targets or at least want a default starting point, you can click Copy Employee Targets, select the employee that you wish to copy from, tick the right box, fill in the appropriates, clicking Confirm will then overwrite the ones that you already have or indeed add them to that particular employee's target records. These will of course show in the KPIs page of each user. When they select weekly, monthly, quarterly, it will bring those targets through and display a color coding system as to how close to those targets they are. You are able to, for each employee, set visibility. If you have branches across the UK that are not linked or won't be using the same clients or candidates, you can restrict visibility for each office or perhaps each region, or even, if it's very different, each team. Usually, the one we're asked for and the main one is either by region or by office. To set that, you can go into Activities and Update Visibility. You'll then need to specify the level of visibility. So in this instance, we're going to select, okay, only each office, because they're so spread out, will see that office's records. When you hit Confirm, that now means that only the records created by each office are visible to that particular office. Finally, here we're going to look at the permissions of an employee. The only two that we have at the moment, and you'll need to click on Edit to see those, are for processing any GDPR compliance, and rates refers to creating rates in frameworks for our temp shift features. To add them in, highlight them, move them over to the right, and click OK. They can easily be removed by selecting one and using the dustbin to delete them. Don't forget to click Save to save those changes and, of course, give those permissions to that employee. And that's about it for this particular webinar. Don't forget you've got the Adapt Help portal accessed via your Adapt system, and the wonderfully helpful client services team who can be contacted by telephone or via the email address on screen. Thanks for listening.